Welcome, my friends, to PMBOK Guide 8th edition executive summary. First and foremost, I want to say a congrats to everyone who was involved, the core team, the final reviewers, and also the members. I know you're all excited. A new shiny PMBOK Guide. But what does this imply? It implies that we need to do our part as professionals. And our part of professionals is reading the book, understanding what it's talking about, and sharing that message with our teams. You know what happens a lot of the years gone by, people expect the trainers of the PMBOK guides to only be those training the PMP exam, but we need to stop that line of thinking and just look at everyone as a potential coach. Everyone is a potential coach and trainer. Okay, thank you for showing me you could hear. Yes, I am still live. Thank you very much. I am live. It is live. So let's jump straight into what everybody wants to know about. Those of you who have been in the world of project management for a very long time, I know your question is, are the knowledge areas still there? Are the process groups still there? That's a big question. And we have to go in baby steps, okay? So we're going to go bit by bit. First of all, if you want to get this executive summary that I'm sharing with you, I'm going to put a hot link in the chat. All you need to do is go on down to programleadershipinstitute.com and you'll be able to see a lot of what I'm going to be covering in the next 1 hour. Okay. So as opposed to you having to read all 400 pages of the book, you can go to that link and you'll be able to get the gist of what this book is all about. Now, prior to presenting this, I had done numerous reviews of the 8th edition in its draft form. And since the full publication was out, I have done my full revision. So all of this can be distilled into a few words. I'll give you the few words and then I'll go deeper. First of all, this is an evolution, not a revolution. What do I mean by that? Well, PMI is known for evolving over time. And all they've done here is taken the latest and greatest in the world of management and projects and product, big word, product, and they've distilled it and put it all together so that you can understand what managing a project is all about and how that fits into programs and how those programs ultimately fit into portfolios that translate the organization's strategic business objectives down into actionable tasks and steps where you can derive that outcome. All right. So the overarching idea is projects also deliver value, but they're a smaller unit of value when you look in economies of scale of programs and portfolios and the entire organization. So it's an evolution. Okay. There are four major categories of change that the PMI has introduced. Let's go into them real quick. Number one is the key terms, core definitions of projects, project management, value, and outcome. So they've been refreshed over 40 years. The language now reflects value streams. The PMI has always been known to define value as the net benefits that are realized by the customer from the outcome. So benefits, value, outcome, products, very big on products, portfolios, and continual change. The second large category of change is global accessibility. In the past, the PMBOK guide was written from a very English perspective, very verbose, very heavy. Now they've distilled it to make it clearer and simpler. Third change is the huge value focus. Fundamental shift from deliverable focus to outcome focus, and rightly so, right? Because in the world of project management today, we're not just thinking about a deliverable. Deliverable was really big in previous PMBOK guides, and we would say a deliverable is a product, service, or result. But now we're focusing not just on the deliverable, which could be a product, a service, or result. And by the way, PMI now brings in a term we've known for a long time, artifact, to really zero in on the difference between a product and other things. But the value focus is realizing that the product, service, or result are all well and good, but that's not the value. The value is what you derive from the use. the utility of whatever it is. So value focus is big, and then refined principles and structure, right? The 12 principles that we had in the seventh edition, they've been distilled down into 6 with the overlap minimized. The classic process groups talk about the return of classic Coke. I look at it as a return of classic Coke because, in the other PMBOK guides, there was a big focus on all those things, process groups, knowledge areas. Well, these have been reborn, not as process groups, but they call them focus areas. The knowledge areas, what the team has tried to do is build a bridge between the seventh so that it's not such a stark return to reality, so to speak. So they had to make use of the lemons and make lemonade out of it. So the seventh edition had a bunch of lemons, but they had to take that and retain the language of domains. And retaining the language of these domains, they have now included the classics, some of the classics, right? So we had, let me just go, let me cut to the chase because I know you PMPs and CAPMs, you're chomping at the bit and you want to know what it all boils down to. Let me show you real quick. So as opposed to having integration, we now have governance. So governance includes some of the original integration processes, and it's baked in managed quality, but it's really stressing the quality assurance piece of it. And then we also have assess and implement changes as opposed to perform integrated change control. And then we also have from procurement, plan, sourcing strategy. So they've taken pieces of quality, which is no longer, in quote, one of the emphasized domains, but it's baked in all throughout. They've also taken the bits of procurement from planning, and all of this has been grafted into a new governance performance domain. Again, I know many of us are sentimental about the old terms, but I would say don't be moved by the change in terminology, just be focused on what it means. So, what this means is right from the get go, out of the gate, and rightly so, you should be thinking about sourcing. It's okay. Whether you put it in here or you throw it into some other category, right? Whether you're in the world of Prince 2 or the world of IPMA, wherever you are, the summary is all these things have to be done as a project manager. All right. So that's governance. All right. Then going into scope, we have the usual, right? Plan scope management. But I like this terminology. Let's zero in on it real quick. This terminology over here, it reads elicit and analyze requirements. This is very apropos because in the world of requirements gathering, you don't just go on to your customer and bang on the door. I've come for a requirements collection. You don't do that, do you? In the world of real project management, it's almost a song and dance. It's almost like you got something I need, and we're partners in this game. Let's draw the requirements out. You get what I'm saying? So it's really more of a drawing out. And I like the fact that this also goes with the business analysis language that we use in some of PMI's publications. So the word elicit is very appropriate. All right. Another big thing that they have changed to show a more ecumenical, all inclusive ideology from the different PM religions is they've changed Create WBS to develop scope structure. Now, what does this mean? It doesn't change what you do, but develop scope structure just means you might be in the world of Agile. In the world of Agile, we talk about the way the hierarchy is. Do you remember? We have products, right? Then we have epics. Then we have features. Remember? In economies of scale, the product is the entire thing. Epics, big chunks of functionality. Features, smaller chunks of functionality. Remember? And then we get into the stories. And all of that before you get into the tasks. Now, as we always say in the world of Agile, your customer could care less about everything under this red line. What they care about is what is above. So in the world of agile, we kind of look at breakdowns differently. We don't look at breakdowns like a WBS, and it's not a very laborious breakdown. Like some WBSs, like on some projects I've worked on, like weapon systems projects, those could go down to a 7 level WBS. Back in the day, you would have level one, which is the top, level two, right? This is the WBS. This is what it was named after before. We keep breaking it down. Imagine going down 7 levels. Now, that was very necessary in a weapon system project, but not everyone needs to use a WBS. You might be in the world of agile, and all you need is a breakdown, a product breakdown. So what PMI has done here is just name it develop scope structure. Okay. And then moving on to the right, we have monitor and control scope. I like the way they put in monitor because it makes sense. The word control is quite drastic and it's not as friendly, but having both, you can see the use of monitoring the scope, and if you need to take action, control the scope. One of the things that they have done that makes a lot of sense is they put monitor and control scope before validate scope. So I know a lot of the murmurings about why did PMI put this first? Why did they put validate scope first? Now the team has made it make some more sense. All right, let's go on to schedule. Going into schedule, there's a drastic change in the schedule area. And that drastic change is, we used to have 6 processes in schedule. Well, we now have 3. It has been distilled down into 3 overarching things. Let's zoom in. First thing is to plan schedule management. How are we going to develop the schedule? What are the rules for developing the schedule? What is the units of accuracy, the units of measure? Are we talking about days, months, weeks, and so on? But then a lot is missing. Remember, back in the day, just to remind you, back in the day, it used to be like this. Back in the day, it used to be plan the schedule, then we had define the activities, we had sequence the activities, remember? Then we had estimate activity durations. And estimate activity durations used to be a combination of things because it's a give and take. So you would have to do this back in those days. You would think of estimating the duration and you would think of estimating the resources, right? But what PMI has done is they have collapsed, right? All of this into what used to be called develop schedule. It's all being collapsed. So if you take a look at this, you just see plan schedule management and then boom, develop schedule. And that just means plan how to develop the schedule and then just get to it. You know what I'm saying? So in developing the schedule, you have all of those minutia. The PMI have now put them under one circle, showing you all of these things go into developing the schedule. And I'm going to cover that before we finish tonight. All right. And then finally, we have monitor and control schedule. So again, it makes sense. You monitor the schedule and then you control it. So a lot of the overhead that was in the previous editions, the PMI team, they've collapsed it into just 3 simple to remember things. And that's okay. All right. So moving on to the area that we used to understand as cost, it's been renamed as finance. Now, back in the day, when I would think of finance, I would think of bankrolling the project, financing the project. Because in those days, you needed to let management know when are the resources, financial resources needed. But now the terminology's changed, but it doesn't change what you're doing, right? So we have planned financial management, planning how to budget, planning how to manage the financial resources on the project. And then we get into estimating the costs and developing the budget for the project. Estimating costs looks at sequenced iterations in the project or phases. How much will each phase take? Or you could even go down to the task level. How much will each task take? And then when you have that understanding and develop budget, which used to be determined budget, you now roll all of those up into the budget. So it's pretty much the same thing, just different terminology, which I would suggest you don't allow that to throw you off. It's not new. You PMPs, you already know this stuff. Then we have monitor and control finances. Same thing. You got to monitor the budget, You got to monitor spend. You got to control the spend. It just used to be called control cost. Now it's called monitor and control finances. So for those of you who are not aware, not only in the sixth edition, but also in Process Groups, a practice guide, the PMI had a very detailed breakdown of many of these things beyond the language that we're using here. So what the eighth edition has done is taken Process Groups, a practice guide, it's distilled some things in the seventh edition, and it's given an eight, which is kind of a compromise, right? And I quite like the fact that they've brought back classic Coke. In fact, I just call it going back to your roots. Thank goodness PMI woke up and smelt the coffee and understood what people in industry were saying, because there was a lot of murmuring. For those of you who remember, you remember my scathing review of the seventh edition. Well, I tell you, this makes the seventh edition look like a child's play, because now they've gone in for a lot of the substance that professionals are looking for. People need more than principles, and that's what the PMI has done in the eighth edition. Not only provided principles, which I'll be going over, but also a great framework. All right. Now, beyond that, we get into stakeholders. Going into stakeholders, we have a collapse again of two knowledge areas. So, what used to be communications management has been taken away, and it's all been rolled up into this new, let's get it right, performance domain called stakeholder, right? So the stakeholder performance domain, it starts off with, first of all, identifying your stakeholders, planning how to engage them, and then planning how to communicate. Who are you communicating with? Gemini, GPT? Those aren't your stakeholders. No, no, no. AI is not your stakeholder, at least not yet. Let's keep it as humans, okay? So we have planned communications management, right? Then we jump into execute and we have managed stakeholder engagement, which is actually getting your hands and feet wet in communicating, in working with your stakeholders. Then we have managed communications, which is actually strictly communicating, sending out messages, memos, having meetings, and things like that. Then we get into monitor stakeholder engagement. And this entails monitoring how your stakeholders are engaged. Do you need to do something differently? And you notice PMI always keep out the word control where humans are involved. And here we have monitor communications. So for a layman, I mean, I know it's a lot more processes in one place, but it's quite easy to remember. You identify who you're going to be working with, you plan how to engage them and how to communicate, you communicate with them, you work with them, and then you check to see if your engagement and your communications are working. Pretty straightforward. All right. Then we get into the world of resource management. And I was quite happy. There's one piece of this that delights me. I'll cover that before we finish. But you got five things to do. One is you plan the resource management. How are we going to manage our resources, human equipment, materials, supplies, and facilities? Then you estimate the resources, how many, how much of human, material, equipment, supplies, facilities. The PMI have also introduced the word virtual resources. And virtual resources are not, they're not the people working at home. No, virtual resources could be things like servers and cloud and stuff like that. Then we have acquire the resources, human, equipment, material, supplies, right? And then we have lead the team. And this is my favorite. This is my favorite. I like this because it brings in one of the things we talk about on the PMP exam. We talk about leading the team. But leadership is everything. You know, the great John Maxwell, my mentor, he says everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything, even great project management. So if I was going to choose one out of all of these that was most important, I'll say is about leading the team, because you can have all of the infrastructure, all of the artifacts, but if you're not leading the team properly, everything falls flat. You know, and John would say the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. It's all about influence. So if you're not able to positively impact and influence the team, everything is gonna fall apart. Last but not least, we have monitor and control resource. And again, this is referring to the non-human. This is not about the human. So monitor and control resourcing is making sure that what was planned, what was promised actually did show up on site. The backhoes, the lorries, the gravel, the cable, whatever it is, right? The PPE, whatever it is, all that stuff showed up and it was used as promised. All right, now if you take a look one more time from the top, you can see that not a lot has changed so far, right? Even the closing focus area, it's pretty much retained the integrity from the sixth edition, right? Despite the conversions. All right, let's go to our final one. If you've been here thus far, smash that like button for me. And I want you to share this with your friends because I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to know what is new. But instead of taking you through 30 hours of training, I'm distilling it down to just one. Okay? If you've got any questions along the way, please feel free to ask questions or chime in. If you've got any ideas that you want to share, if you were part of the team that put this together, you want to give a shout out, just go ahead and chat in. I haven't really looked on LinkedIn to see whether I've gotten any chats in LinkedIn. They don't always make their way here, but I will go ahead and check before we finish. All right, so going into the final one, this is one of my favorites as a risk management professional. Risk. Now, when you talk about risk, we're talking about uncertainty that could impact the project positively or negatively. You think about it. In driving to work today, or in driving for your chores or whatever, I want to wager that you did all of these things. One, you already had a game plan of how to tackle crazy people on the road. That's part of having a game plan. You have a fundamental idea of how to manage uncertainty. If this happens, I'll do this. Right? I remember driving to Honeywell at work many years ago, and all of a sudden, this immaculate sports car jumps in front of me. And my risk mitigation was I have to avoid, I don't want to pay for this car. I have to avoid him. It was very sudden, but I found myself making a number of cascading risk responses that were not adding up. So, in trying to avoid him, my steering was quite flexible and I immediately lost control. And I found myself going in reverse on the I-10, Phoenix, Arizona, true story. So I'm going in reverse. Everyone's going normal. I'm going normal, but in reverse. Long story short, I made a number of calculations that eventually saved my life, saved that sports car, but damaged my car. It was total. But thank goodness, all states, they came to the rescue. You see, we make these decisions. And sometimes you make a risk decision that will lead to another risk, that will lead to another risk, and things start tumbling. And that's what risk is all about. It's a very funny but sobering story because my car was totaled. It was totaled. I went off, flew off the embankment, driver's side shattered, my head shattered the glass. Not a fun story. But when you're driving, you got to make those risk decisions. You got to first of all identify risk. So I identified, oh, this now I'm too close. This guy jumped in front of me. So what happened? He was going on the exit and decided to go from the exit back onto the freeway, and that threw me off. So you got to identify risk. You got to perform a risk analysis, qualitative and quantitative. Then you got to plan risk responses. How am I going to respond? So my response was, I got to avoid this guy. I got to avoid it. But my risk avoidance ended up cascading into something else, right? So when we talk about implementing risk responses, you got to make sure that when you're implementing those responses, everything is as planned as much as possible. Now, back in the day, we would say a workaround would be needed if something just came up that wasn't initially observed. So all of that language is here. Plan how to manage the risk, identify the risks, perform an analysis, qualitative and quantitative, plan the responses, implement the responses, and monitor the risk. And my PMBOK scholars, we just got done with the entire performance domain times focus area matrix. For those of you PMBOK scholars who knew the 49 processes, or if you got certified in the early 2000s, like me, certified in '05, then a lot of this stuff will probably make you feel more comfortable. Because back in the day, a lot of the PMBOK guide was just this. But now that things have changed from the seventh edition, the PMI have also included the principles. So I'm going to go to the principles and explain the principles to you. Let's jump into the principles real quick. So the very first principle, which all of those domains and focus areas need to rest on, are as follows. Adopt a holistic view. Hello, Christy. How you doing? Oh, you got certified in '09. What do you feel about these changes, Christy? Chat into me. What do you feel about these changes? Shout out to Christy, '09. That is 16 years of PMP. Who else? Who else is a PMP? Chat into me, let me know. But good to see you chat in, Christy. Thank you. So building on what we just talked about, you have these principles, and the PMI have distilled the 12 down to 6. Principle number 1, adopt a holistic view. You got to be strategic, you got to be systemic in your thinking, you got to see the big picture. That's really what this is saying. You got to have a big picture view of how all of this stuff on your project weaves together. You got to be considering interdependencies, not just within the project, but the broader ecosystem. And you got to just look at this as big picture pragmatism. You got to always see, what does my project affect? What does the geopolitical landscape look like, and how does that affect my project? What about my stakeholders and the grand scheme of things? And the PMI gives some really great examples. They give an example of how an NGO is looking to roll something out, and they're not aware that the government has an initiative that could wildly change things for them with funding. Everybody likes the word funding, and those benefits the government throws in, and tax breaks. But if you're ignorant to that, if you're not looking holistically, you don't know what's out there. So that's the first one. The second one is focus on value. Value is the ultimate success indicator, and it can be quantified in many ways: ROI, cost savings, or qualitative. Like when a stakeholder gives a good testimonial, or you are aware of the impact that your project makes, that's value. So value is not more, it's what matters. The PMI give a really good example here of an organization who is working on a project, and there are many, many features, but the many features are actually a deterrent to value because people get confused, being that there's so many features. So how can you actually add value? Not features. Distill the features down to the bare minimum. So you cut out the crud and the clutter, you do all the work ahead, and you deliver what is transparent and very easy to use. So it's not about more features. Sometimes it's about less features. Like, you've ever heard less is more? Let's go to the third one, embed quality. You got to embed quality into processes and deliverables, not just meeting specs, but exceeding expectations, and it includes performance, reliability, resilience, efficiency, sustainability, and compliance. Let me give you a very quick look at the world of quality. When I think of quality, I'm thinking of these things. And you probably have learned some of this from your PMP journey. Number one is fitness for use. This is number one. Number two is conformance to the requirements. The third one is customer satisfaction. And the fourth one that usually goes unspoken about is Kaizen. Kaizen is a Japanese word. It just means change for the better, positive change. You should always be evolving and growing. So this is quality. When you talk about quality, fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction, and Kaizen. So I got really excited to see that the PMI had added a principle of quality up front, number 3, because quality as a dedicated domain is not available. So it's important that we do focus on quality right from the get-go. All right, let's go to number 4. And for those of you coming, I just shared the link to all of this. So if you want to be able to go over this alone, just go on down to Program Leadership Institute or Program Management Institute. All roads will lead there. And you'll be able to learn more about our professional program leader certification coming up next year. And you'll also be able to go over all of this stuff. It's all on the website, right? Programleadershipinstitute.com. So, number 4, be an accountable leader. Leadership is all about influence, it's not about title. It's all about integrity, humility, servant leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership, as John Maxwell would say. And anyone can demonstrate leadership behavior. Now, let's talk about how you can lead as a project manager. How many of you have got a new gig, a new job? Some of you have. If you've gotten a new job, I want to say congrats, but I want to give you some insights. And even if it's an old job, maybe you never heard this, I want to give you some insights as to how you can lead as a PM. John Maxwell, in his well known book, The 5 Levels of Leadership, talks about 5 levels. And as a project manager, when you come in, this is level 1 for you. You are a positional leader. Level 1 is position. You have nothing except, well, Phil is a PMP. I think he can do this job good. Phil gets in, and his delivery is either going to make or break his leadership. If he's unable to deliver, he's not going to be looked at as a great leader. But even beyond delivery, think about it. When you get into a firm on day 2, they still don't have a track record of what you can do. Day 3, day 4, day 5, even the first 2 weeks, right? But eventually they begin to see if you are delivering value, if you are stepping up to the plate. So you know what else they judge you on day 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, day 1, the moment you walk into the door and you meet your team, let me show you. This is the permission level. Permission. What do we mean by this? Well, when you meet people, they're actually going to give you permission to lead them or not. They're going to say, oh, I'm going to follow Christy. She's a good PM. I like her. Now, you see that word likability? That's what you've got on day 1, 2, 3. Actually, for your first few days, you can show likability. And I love what the PMI say in this edition, because they talk about humility. If you don't have that humility, that servant leadership, that roadblock remover mindset, you're not going to be able to lead beyond level 1. You will be a positional leader forever. You don't want that. You want to evolve, right? So you got to go to level 3. Level 3 is production. Again, this goes in line with the PMBOK guide, because we talk about results, outcome. So level 3 is people follow you because of what you have done for the firm, what you have done for the department, what you have demonstrated. And if you're not demonstrating and you're not delivering along with the team, they're like, Phil's a useless leader. He can't even lead the team. The team was better off before he came. You get what I'm saying? And then you got to get to level 4, which is the people level. At the people level, people follow you because of what you've done for them, because of what you've done for your colleagues, your peers. My goodness, talk about the peer level. That is so important, because your peers are the ones who are going to jump in to save you when you're drowning, the same way you jump in to save them. I remember being at Honeywell and my contract had come to an end, and guess who jumped in to say to the hiring manager of my next gig, hey, you need to hire Phil. If you don't hire him, you missed the boat. Who was it? My peers. They said, you got to hire this guy. He's good. Hire him. So I left Honeywell on a Friday and came back on a Monday. I left Defense and Space on a Friday, came back to IT Effectiveness on a Monday. Why? It was the people that I was leading. I was showing value. How? How do you show value? Well, some of you already know the story. I was teaching the PMBOK guide and teaching the PMP exam. It wasn't my job. Let's understand that. A lot of PMPs, you got to start teaching this stuff. I need you to teach the 8th edition. Go to the page that I've shared with you and break it down. Watch this video over and over again. Teach it to your companies. Some of you be ducking and diving. I'm shy. I don't want to speak. No, you got to speak. This is the edition that you begin to teach. Did I hear an amen? This is the edition that you begin to teach. I'm serious. Lots of you be hiding from PMBOK Guide like it's your enemy. I don't want to teach it. You can make it very simple. So at the people level, show value, and people are going to be there for you. Just like it happened to me at Honeywell. All my peers came out of the woodwork, told that hiring manager, you got to hire Phil. You got to hire him. It's almost as though they're holding placards. All right, number 5. The final level here is what we call the pinnacle. And at the pinnacle, this is where people see you as the epitome of the leader. You have done level one, you've done level two, you're still doing level one and two, still doing three, still delivering great stuff, still being a roadblock remover for your team, and boom, you get to the pinnacle. And all of that philosophy of why people follow you, the project manager, is distilled into this simple statement: be an accountable leader. You know what accountable means? It means passing the buck stops here. Passing the buck stops with you. That's the realization. Leadership as influence, not as title. Okay. Moving on to number 5, build an empowered culture. Another great quote from my mentor, John Maxwell, is only secure leaders give power to others. Isn't that true? Haven't you seen leaders that want to hoard power to themselves? They will never let you do anything beyond a tiny little bit. They want to do it all themselves. But PMI says no, don't do that. PMI in PMBOK 8 says you got to build an empowered culture, right? The secure leaders give power away. Structured delegation with clarity and support is what we're talking about. We're not just saying give the keys of the company to the weakest performer in the firm. We're not saying that. But we're saying that weak performer can be grown in economies of scale by delegating with clarity and support. Right? This creates psychological safety where input is valued and concerns are welcome. Have you ever been shut down in a meeting? Like in a meeting where everyone's speaking and you speak and they ask you, we don't have time for that, let's move on. How unflattering, how sad. But that's how a lot of organizations are. They shut down the peons. There's a peon and a boss mindset, and we don't want it to be that way. And that's why we got to have an empowered culture. The PMI talks about so much stuff here. They talk about diversity and inclusion. You see, the problem when we talk about DEI, people forget being inclusive just means getting everyone involved. We're not even talking about race, religion, orientation. They're not even talking about all that. Just give people a chance to speak. That's what it means. Like having a diverse palette of voices is only going to help your team do better. I remember my sister was telling me about a situation where they were building the entrance into an establishment, and they had forgotten about everyone until someone in a wheelchair said, one more thing, I think we need to add a ramp for those in wheelchairs. How many establishments have you been to where it's impossible for someone in a wheelchair to get in? You get what I'm saying? But when we're diverse in our thinking, when we allow people to have a voice, we don't miss anything. We get a lot more value. Finally, number 6, integrate sustainability. What are we talking about here? Well, this goes back to the PMBOK 7 stewardship mindedness, right? Think about this as stewardship. You got to meet today's needs without compromising future generations. Don't kill the resources. And when I say resources, I'm talking about the resources in the world. I'm talking about having a green mindedness. Do you know one of the things I hate the most? I hate people just not recycling. It bothers me. Lack of recycling mindedness bothers me. This could do so much good for our earth. Why do you just throw away stuff that could be recycled into the garbage? So, anyway, I won't preach to the choir. I know lots of you already know about this, but you got to consider people, consider the planet, consider society, and consider long term value across all phases. When you distill all that I've said down, my friends, you got the principles which guide your attitude and your mindset, distilled down to 6. Less is more sometimes because you can really unravel and focus. And then the other cool thing that we've determined here is that we got these domains. We got the focus areas, which is new language for the process groups, and we got the performance domains, which have whittled down the 10 into, I have to count, 7 to 7. So it looks like a good deal for a lot of us who you would describe as the PMBOK Puritans. PMBOK Puritans. I was one of the PMBOK Puritans. But I began to evolve and I began to realize it's all about getting work done. It's all about getting from point A, as the PMI showed us, getting from point A to point B, going from a current state to a future state. And however you get there, I don't care how you get there. Just get there if you can. You know that song? And that's how I see these things because there's so many voices in the world, right? There's Scrum is the only way, the Scrum gurus, right? Or you got, oh, Kanban is the only way. Scrum is whack. You ever heard that? It's very colorful in the agile community. Some people think Scrum is the only way. Some people think Kanban is the only way. And then you have those who are free thinkers who are like, I don't care how you do it, just do it. Whether you're going to use knowledge areas, process group, focus areas, domain, I don't care about the language. Just show excellent leadership. That's what it boils down to. Did you get it done? Did you deliver value for the stakeholders? Was the bottom line met? Was the investor money properly invested with great oversight? See, the problem with a lot of firms is they have no oversight. There's no governance, talking about governance at a higher level. So I am hoping that this easier distilling of a lot of the terms we've known for years is going to help many organizations wake up again, start smelling the coffee, and if your organization is one and you want me to come speak to your firm, I do this worldwide. I'll come and speak to them. I'll get them into the mindset of value and benefits, all that good stuff. So, my friends, again, the PMBOK summary, you can get it at programleadershipinstitute.com. All this stuff that I've been going over with you, I would love for you to just open this page and start a conversation. A lot of organizations, they have PMOs, but the problem with the PMOs, they don't have any formal interaction for lessons learned or even informal. The project managers aren't speaking to each other. They're calling all that they're doing different things. There's a divided house of I'm agile, you are a peon, you're doing waterfall. One of the crazy things that happened in PMBOK 8 is they actually included the word waterfall. I was actually against them including the word waterfall because, waterfall is quite demonized. And a lot of people, when they say they're doing waterfall, it's actually not correct. Because if you look at the original Rolls-Royce model, it's not a straight A, B, C, D. They were feedback loops in that original Rolls-Royce model. So when we talk about waterfall, we're talking about something pretty rigid, and that is shown in the 8th edition. But I want you to think more like predictive, hybrid, adaptive. That's also brought out in PMBOK 8. Okay. Now, those of you who are my PMBOK scholars, you're going to stay behind for the coup de grace. This is the final. Okay. I'm going to go over everything finally to make sure I do a great job for you. So let's take a look one more time at this evolution. So, chapter 1 is where I started, and I talked about the 4 categories of change. Chapter 2 gets into the core concepts, things such as value, the excess of financial and non-financial benefits, outcome versus output. This is a very important one that I got to stress because we go into the definition of a project and it reads a temporary initiative in a unique context undertaken to create value. I like that because we're not talking about delivering a product, service, or result like we used to. It's not that we don't deliver a product, service, or result, but the focus is more on value. Temporary nature means defined beginning and end, unique context, driven by distinct goals, environmental conditions, and constraints. Then we have project management. What I like here, the PM, it's very subtle. The PMI has done some subtle here, but it's definitely a good addition. So it's the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques. Watch this. This goes against the original PMI grain to meet or exceed intended value. Oh, did we just rewrite what quality meant? I think we did. Think about it. When you go to your favorite restaurant and what is delivered to you is less than ideal, you are incensed. When it is just what you're expecting, you're like, okay, quality was met today. But when it goes above and beyond, you are a raving fan. You become a crazed raving fan. And lots of you know your favorite brands. I don't know what your favorite brands are. I've got my favorite. I used to like Tommy. I don't hate him anymore, but I like other things now. But you have an idea that brand, when you buy a Tommy product and it's like, what is this? This is poor quality. Where was this thing made? Then you begin questioning it. But when you get, those of you coach people, you get your little coach bags and purses, and you're like, wow, this is quality, just as I expected. But what happens when it's way beyond what you expect? You're even happier. You're a raving fan. So are we going to say that quality is only when you deliver exactly what the customer wanted? No, that's old school. So PMI have revised the understanding of what quality means. It's there in other places in the book. Project success, a consensus view among beneficiaries, stakeholders, and participants that the project delivered value worth the effort and expense, delivered or exceeded. Imagine that, right? Portfolio, pretty much same as before. Program, pretty much same as before. One of the things that was talked about in a previous PMBOK guide, which is really important. I got to cover this. In fact, I got to cover some of the most important pieces in the beginning. It's the system for value delivery. And it just says portfolios, programs, projects, products, and operations are no longer separate silos. They're interlocking components of a larger system designed to generate and sustain value. How many of you folks read the PMBOK Guide 7th edition? I don't expect to see any show of hands. I don't expect to because I know many of you did not. Many of you skipped that edition. Well, let me see if I can wake things up a little bit for you here. Okay, I'm going to try to wake things up. Let's go into a deeper dive. I'm going to highlight what a lot of people missed. Let's go there. So, what a lot of people missed in the system for value delivery from previous discussions gone by was this really cool imagery from the 7th. And the mindset is very identical. A portfolio is a collection of projects, programs, and other initiatives, other work that are designed to achieve the strategic business objective of the entire firm. So, under portfolios, we could have programs like this, and we can have these projects within the program. Portfolio B shows multiple projects not in a program, but then we also see a program as well. And then inside a portfolio, we could just have standalone endeavors, right? We could have programs and projects, either related or not. And the operations that you see at the bottom, those are there to sustain and help all of the other vehicles, portfolios, programs, projects. They all work hand in hand. So this is a big deal in the 8th edition as well. So a portfolio, a collection of projects, programs, and operations managed as a group to maximize value while meeting the strategic business objectives. We want to maximize that value. And then a program is a group of related projects managed together to achieve benefits not available individually. Okay, so this is quite important. Moving on from here to how I see this world, I see it like an aquarium, right? I see the system for value delivery as an aquarium. And the operations is the lifeblood of the aquarium. It's like the water. The programs, as you can see here, are like the rocks. The portfolios are like the bigger boulders, if you will. The projects are like the pebbles. And the outcome is peace, relaxation. Look at the fish enjoying their little habitat there. It's like the value delivered delights the fish. That's how I like to see it. Now, moving into the flow of information, which is also covered in the eighth edition, the idea is as follows. Senior leadership have got to understand strategy. And again, I just want to stress, if you are a senior leader and you want to understand strategy, product, value delivery from a very hybridized perspective, if you want to get more into the world of program leadership and understand how to lead teams and firms, I want to encourage you, go back to that site and hit home on programleadershipinstitute.com and understand what we have coming up next year, because a lot of this stuff is very easy to cover here, but broken down into case studies and sharing ideas with like-minded professionals is something that we don't do a lot of. We do a lot of certification, but not a lot of practicalization, right? So I encourage you, going down to programleadershipinstitute.com and understand the 2026 program coming up. Because when we talk about strategy, there's a lot more that goes into it. When you really boil down every organization, whether you're looking at Tesla, you're looking at Amazon with their AWS. You know what happened when AWS went down? Bad things happened. But how do they get so dominant? Is by strategy. When you think about firms like Coca-Cola, how do they get so dominant? How do they always oh, sorry, Pepsi people. Let me stop that. Let's talk about the iPhone. Steve Jobs, rest his soul, Tim Cook is now at the helm. Has he been able to sustain that? It's strategy, my friends. Strategy is very important. So senior leadership comes up with a strategy. The portfolio managers understand the strategy and how to distill that into programs and projects, and how those programs and projects interact with operations, because the desired outcome, benefits, and value, right, are passed across to the program and project team. They get those done, they deliver deliverables, there's support and maintenance passed on the baton to the operations team. The operations team give updates, and it's a back and forth, right? Ultimately, the performance information and progress is bubbled up to the top, back to senior leadership, and it's a give and take. And that's why every October or every however often you guys do all the budgets and the strategy, someone at the top needs to be thinking strategically. They need to be thinking about OKRs. They need to be thinking very product centered. So the whole idea about a product operating model comes into discussion. And again, we're going to talk more about this in January next year. All right. So this is the flow. But moving beyond that, right here is a very important image in PMBOK 8. And I'm going to call out the page just so everybody looks at that page. If you've got the edition, I know some of you out in Phoenix, Arizona, you got your flashy little PMBOK 8 showing it off on social media. I see you. I see you. But let me tell you a page that excites me. It's page 23. Page 23 in PMBOK 8 excites me. Why is that? Because it exposes you to what is called a sample product life cycle. There's a lot of celebration in the introduction of any product, isn't it? You deliver that product and everyone's crazy excited. But that's just the initial creation. You got to go beyond project one into additional features, enhancements, even if not features, additions. Maybe the GUI is just out of whack and you get the GUI looking more polished. It's like, wow, everyone's happy. But all of these additions and revisions in project 4 and 5 and 6, it culminates in the project's retirement. And this is very much like the life of the PMBOK guides. First edition came, then second edition, then third edition, then fourth edition. Now we're on to the eighth edition. Hopefully they won't retire the PMBOK guide. I hope not. Maybe we'll get to edition 100 sometime. But anyway, I know that's not your concern. You're concerned about the eighth. But jokes apart, every project is just a blip on the radar of the entire product life. You get what I'm saying? So this is stressed on page 23. And why does it excite me? It excites me because we need to think more holistically at an organizational level about the life of the product. Projects are all well and good, don't get me wrong. But beyond seeing your isolated project, you got to think about the grand scheme of evolution of that thing that you've developed. And that takes you into a more product mindedness. And now we're talking about programs, and you can see how program A, you have project one, you have project two over the passage of time, project three, and a lots of you in government, you see how every year there's a new program, or the program is in place, but there are new projects to sustain the program. This is very similar. So as a project manager, as opposed to just thinking in a silo of your project, you got to see how your project could be part of a program and how that program ultimately is part of a portfolio, and ultimately how that portfolio adds value, benefits, outcomes at a macro level to the firm. Okay, so let's go back to PMBOK 8, take a look at things we may not have covered here. So the project management mindset is a precursor to the principles that we talked about. And it says project management is more than performance domains, it's an anchored mindset. And the mindset is distilled into these three dimensions, which filter down into the principles that we just talked about. So the three core dimensions is one, be proactive. And that means adopting a holistic view of all elements and interdependencies and embedding quality into the process and deliverables from the start. Then we have ownership, be an accountable leader who demonstrates integrity, build an empowered culture with psychological safety where people feel valued, right? Where people aren't thinking that what they have to contribute will be looked down on, if you get what I mean. We want to maintain that philosophy that it's okay to contribute to the discussion. And then we have value driven, focus relentlessly on delivering real value and integrate sustainability across all project areas. And that's how we got the 6 principles that we talked about for a long time. Also, here we have the sustainability pyramid. And it just says when addressing project externalities, unintended negative impacts should follow this hierarchy. The best thing to do is avoid negative outcomes. That's the highest priority. Where you cannot do that, you can minimize the negative outcomes when avoidance is impossible, restore the situation where the damage might have occurred, or lastly, compensate or offset for remaining negative outcomes. So you got to be thinking about sustainability in this lens. Sustainability shows up tactically, material choices, operationally, energy efficiency, strategically, the portfolio being shaped around sustainable value. And with the rising ESG importance, this is not optional. This is how we need to be thinking. We need to be thinking about sustainability a lot more. Okay, going into the 4th section here, for those PMBOK scholars who are still listening, we talk about development approaches and life cycles. And to give you a very good idea about this, I'm going to show you an image. I can bring up that image right here. Okay. So when you're thinking about life cycles, you got to bucketize them into predictive or hybrid or adaptive. Hybrid is a combination of predictive and adaptive, right? It could be 60-40, it could be 70-30, it could be 80-20, it could be a variety. Now, when we talk about hybridized project management, I was very happy to see this making its way into the 8th edition. And in the 8th edition, when we talk about hybridization, we see it in these 4 possibilities. Number 1, adaptive. You can have an adaptive section of your project where everything is pretty much agile. Although what typically happens is the agile components often follow a lot of structure. So we put predictive first, and then we have adaptive. And what we mean by this is really we have a more agile section of the project. You can have everything planned up front, get those done, and then the implementation or the navigation across the firm needs to be more adaptive. So we're talking about hybrid models here, hybrid models. So that's the first model. The second model is what I call an agile predictive sub. So you could have this going on your project. You could have a predictive aspect and an adaptive aspect, all happening at the same time in different sections of the project. Thirdly, you can have a whole lot of predictive processes going on, and you can have a small pocket of pockets of adaptive. When we say adaptive, please understand we're talking about agile. So you can have a predictive framework with sprinklings of Scrum or sprinklings of the ingredients of Scrum, daily stand-ups, right? Walking the board, um, caves and commons, things such as that. And then going into the fourth model, you can have a largely adaptive framework on your project, but you can have pockets of predictive flavors, things like risk management, structured risk management with a risk register and things like that. So you can have pockets, scattered pockets of predictive pockets to add more substance and value and coherence, depending on what the need is. Okay. So going back here, when we talk about the spectrum of approaches, moving to the right is more iteration. So if you take a look, as we move beyond what I was showing you, as you're moving to the right, you have more iterations. You're thinking more iteratively and incrementally at that point. Okay. The guide uses the term predictive rather than waterfall. The original waterfall model included feedback loops and iteration, and the term has been misused to represent rigid one-way sequences. So I really just want you to understand when you're looking at my cliff notes here, because I make some cliff notes. And then we got into the 7 performance domains: governance, scope, schedule, finance, stakeholders, resources, and risk. I put this here for you just to be able to distill it all down. Okay. Now, beyond what we have here, I know some of you are going to be really excited to know that the inputs and the tools and the techniques, yes, they're back. The inputs, the tools, and techniques, there's now a section behind the book where those are explicitly called out. And I was very happy to see some of the old faithfuls, both the cost of quality, earned value management, all of those tools and techniques that a lot of you have found value from over the years. They are all there. Okay, let's see what else. Have we covered everything? Oh, yes. The final thing I got to cover is the question everybody has. Phil, does that mean I'm doomed because I was studying for PMP? Well, the PMI have made some announcement, and I got to show you the announcement so that I'm right on the money with it. But the PMI made an announcement on their website that the PMP exam will be changing in July 2026. So let's go there. Let's bring up that announcement. Those of you procrastinators, I'm seeing you. Those are my students. I've got about 180 students, thereabouts. I'm not going to mention their names, but can you imagine 180 students delaying taking the exam in 2025? I'm taking you on a guilt trip. You know who you are. You know who you are. And I don't feel sorry for you because I've been telling you change is coming. But the cool thing is you got some time. I'm just messing with you. So it says, did you know a new PMP exam is coming in July 2026? I gotta give PMI a round of applause. Let's give PMI a round of applause. Let's give PMI. Do you know why I'm giving them a round of applause? Because in time past, they would never announce the PMP exam was changing so far in advance. This is November, December. They're giving you like 9 months. Wow, that's a record. That's a record. But I'll be back to see if they really do it on the day. I'll be back to see if they did it on the day. Okay, did you know a new PMP exam is coming out July 2026? Stay informed on exam updates and prepare for the 2026 PMP certification. It says, keeping up with changing times, the project management professional PMP exam is changing too. The 2026 updates reflects the future of the profession with a sharper focus on the skills and mindsets driving meaningful results in today's world. A reimagined PMP exam built around real-world impact and value. Updated learning resources available April 2026. A continued promise to uphold the PMP as a global gold standard. Cough. IPMA, I'm sorry. Prince 2, you know I love you guys. I'm sorry. They're PMI's words, they're not mine. All right, you can take the current exam anytime until July 2026. A pilot of the new exam will run from 5th of January to 30th of January 2026, and the fully updated exam launches in 2026. Does this sound familiar? Shivers for some of you. You won't be able to register for the new version until July 2026, but you can start preparing for it in April 2026 when the new materials are released. Okay, exciting news. So, the PMP certification exam content outline 2026 defines what is tested on the exam. And here you have the pleasure of seeing shivers for some of you. The PMP exam content outline. Let's see what's in here. So, as usual, we have the people domain, the process domain, and the business environment. Lots of you procrastinators feel what has changed. Well, let me let you know right off the bat that the business environment is now 26%. Those of you procrastinators, you remember it was just a measly 8% or something like that. Well, now it's a lot more. The people domain, which used to be 42%, has shrunken down to 33%. And the process domain, which was 50%, has shrunken down, thank goodness, to 41%. It's shrunken down by 9%, thereby making it fairer for the people taking the exam to succeed if they're business oriented, right? But at the end of the day, when we get into the details, this is what we see. Okay. People domain. Task one, develop a common vision. Even the good book says where there's no vision, the people are in trouble. Yep, that's true. So we want to develop a common vision. Number two, which used to be number one, is now manage conflicts. And it just makes sense. As a PM, as a team, you should take conflict head on. Task three, which is always my favorite because it's about leadership. I'm all about leadership. And this says lead the project team. Establish expectations at the team level, empower the team. Don't you love it? Solve problems, all that great stuff. We have engaged stakeholders, which hasn't really changed. But when we talk about engaged stakeholders, what I like about this new content outline is they've made it very clear that you got to identify them, analyze them, and tailor the communication. And this is quite in line with PMBOK 8. Task 5, still on stakeholders, is about aligning stakeholder expectations. Task 6 is about managing stakeholder expectations. Task 7 is about helping to ensure knowledge transfer. And this just makes sense. I was on a project and there was one person who knew everything. And I was scared. I hope he doesn't get hit by a bus because that's the end of the entire project. He wasn't doing any knowledge transfers. He was the brain behind the entire thing. But we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're transferring knowledge. Number 8, plan and manage communications. That's what the project manager should be doing. Hello. And moving on to the process domain, you see a very stark jump in people versus process compared to the previous content outline. What is that? Well, back in the day, the people domain used to be 14 tasks, but now we have only 8 tasks. So 6 tasks have been integrated into other areas. And that takes us into the process domain. So at an executive viewpoint, we now have 10 tasks for the process domain. This used to be 17. So I'm very delighted to see there's been a cut down of just, a lot of stuff that could be rolled up into one. Task 1 says develop an integrated project management plan and plan delivery. This just makes sense whether you're agile or you're predictive. It says recommend a project management development approach, determine critical information requirements, recommend a project execution strategy, and the bottom line is you got to collect and analyze data, make project decisions. The second task is develop and manage project scope, which just makes sense. Task 3, help ensure value-based delivery. It's all about value, my friends. And I'm glad that PMI is focused on the value. It's not about the big old processes to get deliverables. It's really about, are we value-minded even in the features we're working on? Or are we just doing busy work? You get the idea. Task 4, plan and manage resources. It just makes sense, right? It's more like the resource area that we talked about, plan and manage procurement. I quite like the idea that procurement is front and center in its own task since PMI removed it from the 8th edition and kind of weaved it into various processes throughout the 8th edition. Plan and manage finances. The language now rhymes with PMBOK 8. Plan and optimize quality of products and deliverables. Very happy to see quality making its appearance, and rightly so. Plan and manage schedule. Just makes sense. It's stuff we talked about earlier. Evaluate the project status. You already know stakeholders are big on this. So metrics, analysis, reconciliation, things like that. Then we get into task 10, manage project closure. It just rhymes with the language in the PMBOK Guide 8th edition. Finally, my friends, we have the business environment, and business has swollen up to 8 tasks from 4. So it's double the size. But I'm quite excited because I'm a business guy. I like this stuff. So we have task 1, define and establish project governance. And PMI would often define governance as a framework within which authority is exercised. And it just makes sense because we're talking about escalation path and thresholds. We're talking about planning and managing compliance. This hasn't changed from the last outline. Manage and control changes. Just makes sense. It's what project managers always do anyway. Remove impediments and manage issues. I would have looked at that more in process, but even at a more executive standpoint, we can look at removing impediments much more higher up on the food chain. Task 5, plan and manage risk. Again, it's something that you could do at the organizational level or you could do at the project level. So some of this used to be in process, it's moved on to business. Task 6, continuous improvement, Kaizen, as I mentioned earlier. Task 7, support organizational change. If the organization is changing and your project supports it, that's something you should be happy about, right? And task 8, evaluate external business environment changes. This used to be in the previous outline. Talking about what you need to be a PMP, if you have a secondary school diploma and all of this other good stuff, which has now been called out, upper secondary school leaving certificate, and so on, then you need 5 years, right? 5 years of non-overlapping experience. And it says leading projects in the past 10 years. So they've taken it back more than just 8 years. Before it used to be 8 years. Now it's 10 years. So that gives you more ramp up time. I actually had a student asking me, Phil, I really would have liked to retake my PMP. Cautionary note. If you are PMP certified and you're thinking of letting it lapse, put on your smart person hat, because I've had a lot of stakeholders who let their PMP lapse. They find themselves in a different place in life and they want to do it again. I have one of my stakeholders wants to do the exam again. So I got to share this with them that it's now 10 years and they may qualify, because some people haven't managed projects for 15 years, some even almost 20. They got to get the experience. You see why you shouldn't let your PMP lapse. Anyway, completion of a recognized associate's level higher certificate is also recognized here. They say a minimum of 48 months, and they also give you the equivalent. So there's an updated considerations for people that are beyond just the high school diploma. So this is 4 years for people that have an associate's, and I quite like that. So well done, PMI. You're moving with the times. So a lot of people, they're not doing the whole 4-year, 5-year degrees anymore. And then those who have a bachelor's degree, it's still 3 years. And then if you went to a GAC accredited college, a minimum of 24 months. So that has remained pretty much the same. All right, let's get into the grimy details that everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know. So the PMP exam coming up, we're going to have a total of 185 questions, and they're going to be 10 pre-test questions. Today we have 175 questions, of which 10 were pre-test. So now it's just the clear 175, the 10, but you don't know which 10 they are. Also, the allotted exam time, thank you, PMI, just make it a round number. They've taken away that goofy 230-minute number, and it's now 240 minutes. I don't begrudge them. Good idea. All right, over here, we have case or scenario, where the candidate is presented with a detailed scenario or situation which may include graphs or charts to provide additional context. So, so those of you who are thinking of, oh, I guess I'll just delay the exam. Maybe this will put some fire under you. Look at that beast of a question. Isn't that a ferocious question? This could take the entire exam to understand. So my suggestion to you is, if you're looking at taking the exam in 2025 or before July 2026, yeah, definitely do that. You go ahead and do that, because the exam, it always looks like it gets a little bit trickier or more challenging. So a model like this, it says the candidate is presented with a scenario which may include graphs or charts to provide additional context. This could be a description of a business, a project, a decision-making process, or a combination of any. After reviewing the scenario, situation, and any accompanying visuals, the candidate will answer a series of questions based on all the information provided. Sorry, AI cannot help you with this one. Too many people saying, oh, well, I'll just use AI to jinx. No, you can't use AI. Even studying with AI, I just say be careful, because AI, a lot of times, it doesn't understand stuff. I asked AI a question, one of my questions, because a student said, this can't be right. So I asked AI and he got it wrong. And I'm like, yeah, you're not a human, so you don't understand everything. So be careful using AI. We have enhanced matching. Could include images or diagrams to help clarify the items being matched. In the example below, the candidate will drag one of the boxes on the right to a specific location on the chart. So you want to show where this project is ahead of schedule? Yeah, you can see. This is not a good situation because they've got all this work left. But here, what do you see? The ideal burn down. So this is ideal, but this shows they're not matching ideal. This is unfavorable. This is favorable because this is the work left. So the ideal breakdown had 300 left. Are you seeing what I'm talking about? This had 300 left, but this is a better situation. So where the blue line comes under is common sense anyway. That place is favorable. I plan to have 300 left at that point, but I only have 250 left. So that's good. Here you can see they're right on the money. Here you can see they're at 70, which they're still doing quite good. But whether they're going to get there to zero on 5-7 is to be determined. So these are just some examples of the question types coming. Then they have graphic-based questions. This type of question requires the candidate to refer to and interpret visual information. So here you go. There you've got these requirements. Salesforce, shameless advertising for Salesforce. Anyway, there you have it. The high staff turnover at the Business Solutions Center has caused significant frustration among B2B customers. And honestly, the way it was previously on the PMP exam, they would make it baby language for you. Like they'd give you what the mnemonics mean, or they'll give you what the abbreviations mean, like B2B. Some people won't know what B2B is. That would be curtains for them. Except they can use common sense to rationalize it. The others, they kind of did put what the abbreviations mean. So that's cool. Hopefully, people taking the exam know some of these things. Over here, we have multiple choice, single response, multiple response questions, multiple answer choices with more than one correct answer. We have point and click here as well. And you can see the area where you expected to click to get it right has been shown. We have matching, the almighty horrible matching that many of you cry about. Someone cried to me, Phil, I had 12 matching questions. Yeah, it can be tough, and it's not going to change, as you can see on this new PMP exam. All right. Then we have the pull down list. The correct answer must be selected from a drop down as shown below. So it's a lot of new stuff, a lot of new stuff. And then we also have language about taking the PMP exam, retaking the exam, acknowledgements, and the CCR program, right? Make sure you folks go to ccrs.pmi.org. If you've not been checking your PDUs, let me send it to you, because I know some of you are clueless, and I don't want you to lose your certification. Some of you ain't checking up on your ccrs.pmi.org. Let me put that in the chat. For those of you who know that, that is really more about your PMI, PDUs for all the certifications you have. Make sure you're checking up on it. Yeah, because I'm owing PMI. I'm owing them PDUs. I'm owing them like half a PDU. Half a PDU is what is holding my renewal of one of my certifications, which is just ridiculous. I got to get that squared away. Don't let that happen to you. Can you imagine waking up and then going to CCRS and seeing suspended? Your certification is suspended. It's not fun. Make sure you keep an eye on those pesky little PDUs, 60 PDUs. Those of you PMPs, those of you CAPMs, can't remember what it is for CAPM. My CAPM expires in 2027. So I have 5 of these certifications from PMI. I cried uncle after they started churning out more and more certs. I'm like, PMI, I'm done. My OPM3 was 3-in-1. I said, never again. That's it. I'm done with certifications for life with PMI, because my OPM3 was quite an experience, and then they disbanded it. I wasn't happy about that. And I looked in the PMBOK 8th edition. I saw Claudia, my OPM3 teacher. She had OPM3 against her name like me, and then one other person. Only 3 of us in the entire thing. But anyway, my friends, over the past number of minutes, I have been edutaining you. Hopefully, I've been entertaining you with PMBOK Guide 8. I know a lot of the skeptics, like me, wouldn't be very impressed, but I decided to take the high road. And I decided to say, well done, well done, well done. The team of people that put this together. It is very difficult to satisfy 2 million stakeholders. I'm estimating 2 million because of the number of PMPs we have. But anyway, someone wanted to know how much the PMP exam is. If you're not a member, 675. Currently, I hope it doesn't go up again. And then if you are a member, 575 thereabouts. But don't forget, you also have to pay for membership. So the numbers all add up. But any questions from anyone? Questions, concerns, comments that I can answer for you? I don't see any questions. Let me put out the clarion call. Questions. While I'm here, I'll be very happy to tackle any of these questions for you. Okay, I don't see any questions. Seems like everyone's squared away. How much does the PMBOK Guide 8th edition cost? Well, I think I ordered mine directly from PMI's site. Let's actually take a look at that. Now you ask. Now you ask. Let's go to pmi.org and let's look at resources. So I think PMI has an offer for the PMBOK Guide that's almost half the price. Let's go there. All right. So become a member to get a free PDF download. So if you're a member, you can get a free download. But I think when you log in, you see the 7th edition going for a big percentage off. I'm sorry to raise your hopes. Sorry. Let's go to Amazon. Oh dear. So going to Amazon, we can see, okay. So going to Amazon, the price is probably not what you were hoping. I'm sorry. It's $119. Sorry for raising your hopes like that. But yeah, it's $119. Sorry. It's not as cheap as I thought it was. I think they're doing a bargain for the 7th edition for members, if I remember correctly, but not the 8th. I think the 8th is what it is. All right. Let me go on to LinkedIn and see if I missed any comments or questions. Did I miss anything? Oh, Stacy Jones. I didn't see that, Stacy, but thank you for chatting in. I wonder why it didn't come through, Stacy. This is really ridiculous. But let me take your chat and let me share it. Let me share it with everyone else, because this is what StreamYard does this from time to time. Okay. Okay. So this is from Stacy Jones, and Stacy says, let's put it on the screen. This is a helpful breakdown. I appreciate how the 8th edition leans more towards principles, adaptability, and value delivery instead of rigid memorization. You got that right. Absolutely. It reflects how real projects actually work, especially in healthcare. Yep, healthcare operations where priorities shift quickly and teams need room to think, not just follow steps. I'm looking forward to learning more about how these updates support better decision making and stakeholder alignment in fast moving environments. Nicely said. Nicely said, Stacy. Thank you very much for that. Right on the money, right on the money. All right, let's see. Did I miss anything else? Because it's very difficult to keep up with chats when you are wading into unknown or unfamiliar territory. To be quite honest, not too unfamiliar. It's just that PMI in the 8th edition, they present more principle, as Stace was saying, more principle mindedness, more product mindedness, and a bigger gathering of ideas, considering different geographies, different languages, different perspectives. Okay. All right. Well, this is just the first of many. I hope to do this again. Like I said, I spent a lot of time unraveling the guide myself. So if you have any questions afterwards, just type them in. It's kind of hard for anyone who doesn't have the history coming from other editions of the PMBOK Guide. It is quite hard to just take the 8th edition and orientate it, which is why I wanted to do this for people before they start pulling their hair out. Because if you don't understand the history of the knowledge areas and the process groups, and it's a lot. You get what I'm saying? Part of my concerns, let me go back to what I was sharing. Part of my concerns are also Let's see if I can get it back up. Where are you? I got to show you part of my concerns. Part of my concerns were this new PMP exam content outline. If you look at the language here, it says domain 2, domain 1. And these are different from the domains in the PMBOK Guide 8th edition. You get what I'm saying? They're very different. So let's distill it down very clearly, very clearly. Okay. PMBOK 8 versus PMP 2026. Okay. Here we're talking about focus areas. We're talking about performance domains. Note the word performance. In the PMP exam content outline for 2026, we're talking about, let's go there so that you can see the exact language. Let's go back right to the beginning. And they're simply referred to as domains. And under each domain, you have tasks and you have enablers. So these performance domains are different from these domains. You could think of these ones as exam domains. The exam domains are people, process, and business. Okay. These are not equal to these domains. So don't get it mixed up because these are exam domains. Let me put the word exam here to help those of you. Exam domains are not the same as performance domains. Okay. And then just to keep your head straight, these are the big pieces that you need to focus on for your exam. You have principles, right? You have performance domains, and then you also have the PMP exam content outline for 2026 July. You don't need to worry about any of this stuff I showed you until July 2026 when the exam is changing. Okay? Okay, let's see. Did I miss anything? Chandra, how you doing? Good to see you. Chandra is one of our PLI members from the Project Leadership Institute. Thank you for watching, Chandra, and good to see you. As always, Chandra is a PMP and an ACP and has got many other agile certifications like the PSM. Good deal, Chandra. Good to see you come through. Okay, Chandra, what do you think of these changes? What do you think of them? We got a number of people who we interface with on a regular basis at the Project Leadership Institute. I'm wondering what they're thinking. Let me see if I missed anything. Awesome, Chandra. Always a pleasure to see you on here. Let's see if I missed anything else. I don't think so. Let's put this in the chat. For those of you just coming, I made it such that you would be able to go back and watch. Chandra says, these changes are in the right direction. How the industry is moving forward. Absolutely, Chandra. Absolutely. That's right. Okay. For those of you who want to read more, I am putting in the link to the Program Leadership Institute so that you can just download or just read online whichever one you want to do. But just go to Program Leadership Institute, and then you'll be able to see the summaries that I have here. Okay. All right. So, in conclusion, when all is said and done, my friends, the PMBOK Guide 8th edition represents a maturation, as Chandra was alluding to, of project management thinking. It acknowledges that context matters, no single approach works everywhere, value is paramount, projects exist within products, leadership transcends titles and positions, and sustainability is essential. The 8th edition doesn't abandon what worked, it evolves the conversation to match the reality of modern organizations navigating continuous change while pursuing sustainable value. Here's a final takeaway, my friends. No matter what you do, remember, we're not dogmatically applying every single process, every single focus area, and every single performance domain dogmatically and rigidly to every single initiative. No. For that reason, the PMI included a section on tailoring. And when you're tailoring, you got to ask the question, what is best for the project? What is best for the team? What is best for the organization? But most importantly, what is best for stakeholders? Sometimes you got to deliver in increments. Other times it's almost impossible, but you got to look for ways of delivering value upfront as early as possible. You got to look for ways of getting feedback. And therefore, we talk about things like the MVP, minimum viable product. We talk about minimum business increment, things like that. So I want you to understand the PMI is not saying, this is the message from PMI according to the world, and thou shalt apply it exactly as is. No, no, no. I would say look at it as guidance, showing you possibilities, places where you might not have thought of. Now you have the opportunity to think, PMI said that. Maybe this could work here. Okay. There are many great tools and techniques I have not covered. This book, mind you, is broken into two. It comes to about 401 pages. There's a section that has the principles, but there's a section that has a lot more stuff. And I didn't even cover all of that. Now, if you're getting ready for the exam, you might want to look out for my latest video on 500 definitions of project management. You can find that on the Praision channel because there's so many things. There's absolutely no way we can cover it all. That's a 35-hour course. I also realized that the font size is such that there's a lot squeezed in to some of those tools and techniques and process pages, a lot of stuff. Okay. But if you are a PMP already, you are a CAPM, bookmark this. Do help by subscribing and smashing the like button. Come back to it, watch it frequently, because you're going to hear a lot of things that you may not have heard the first time. I am also giving you the PMBOK 8 challenge. If you are a PMP hearing the sound of my voice, I want you to do this. Take what I've shared with you today. I've already distilled it down on the site, okay? programleadershipinstitute.com. I'm challenging you. I need you to teach this to your team. Those of you who've been certified for over 5 years, teach this to your business unit. Those of you who've been certified for 10 years, teach it to your entire company. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay, my friends, that's all for now. I appreciate you. Thank you, all of those who came through. Chandra, Stacy, Ohana in the beginning. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you again as we continue this journey. This is just the beginning. You take care. I'll see you soon.